Hello again and welcome to On the Tee, our fortnightly golf podcast, coming to you with the courtesy of JK's World of Golf. You can find them at Nixon Road at Auckland International Airport, or just check them out online, jksworldofgolf.com. I'm Brendan Telfer, and with me, my co-host Tom Hyde. This is our last podcast of the year. In fact, it's our last podcast, I guess for that matter, for the decade. Today, Tom and I thought we would look back on 2019, the golfing year, both locally and in a broader sense around the world as well. It hasn't exactly been a controversial year, 2019, but it's, as always, it's been a very interesting year, and also a number of things have been happening around Tiger Woods. And Tom, nice to have you on board again. I guess in a way, Tiger Woods, even though he only won 2 tournaments, he was the story, wasn't he? I suppose if there's a single highlight in 2019, it would have to be Tiger Woods and the Masters, wouldn't it?
Oh, without a doubt, mate. I mean, it transcends golf, because to me, his winning the Masters, I try and think, is there a greater comeback in sport than that? And I mean, I'm not obviously an expert on all sports at all time, not a historian, but it's hard to think of one, because, you think what he went through, the surgeries, the issues, the personal issues, but mostly the surgeries.
Nine surgeries, I think, he had between his knees and his back.
Yeah, and to do that, and I can't help but think that when he came up the 18th at Augusta on that final day, that the whole world was watching, and thinking, come on, dude, you can do this. And of course, he was 2-shot lead over DJ and Xander Schauffele and Brooks, I think, but he had an extra shot to give, and he needed it. And he gets up and he makes that putt, and I just thought it was the culmination of an incredible story, such that whether he wins another major or not, I hope he does. But if he doesn't, we'll still remember him for that.
Yeah, and also he's 43 years of age.
Right.
Even if he was fully fit and never been anywhere near a surgeon's knife, winning a major championship at the age of 43 doesn't happen that often. It's not unprecedented.
Good point.
And he's had so many what I would describe as aborted comebacks from injury, hasn't he? He's come back and he's been full of enthusiasm and optimism about what's happened to him, and he's recovered well, he's rehabilitated well, and then bang, couple of tournaments into his recovery or his comeback, he's out again with another injury. And you kept thinking, well, this is enough, Tiger. You don't need to put yourself through this anymore. But the sheer dogged determination of this guy to prevail at all costs, and it doesn't matter how many times he was injured, he was always coming back. And I guess he continues to come back, because I think after that, when in April he had another minor surgery which was kept pretty quiet, but it was subsequently revealed, I think, in August. And he didn't do much, did he, after Augusta, until he got to Japan a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's right, and won again at the Zozo.
The Zozo.
Zozo, yeah. Had to look up that and see what Zozo is. It's a tech company, I believe. But anyway, he won again, and that sets us up for 2020. And I see that when you look at in, say, the golf magazines, and you read the experts' predictions for the majors in 2020, his name comes up again at the Masters. And I think, who am I to say he won't win the Masters? Because that Augusta National seems to be a course where he thrives.
It must be something about that course that especially suits his game more than the other major championship venues.
Yeah.
And you're right, I think he will go there as the favourite, particularly after what he did in Japan. I had a feeling after 4 or 5 months of him doing nothing after Augusta that it's a bit like what sometimes they say, maybe here in New Zealand when we talk about the All Blacks at the recent Rugby World Cup, or England for that matter, they peaked. They played their final in the semi-final, and I'm thinking Tiger only wanted to win another major, and if he had to pick one, it was going to be Augusta, and after that, the rest was irrelevant. But watching him in Japan a few weeks ago at the Zozo, it's like he'd never been away. The shots he was playing, that ability to put those iron shots, his approach shots, 4 or 5 feet from the hole, finding the fairway on most times, and making putts he had to make, it was like something from 10 years ago.
Yeah, and in fact, it was so perfect. He was beautiful there. I mean, his swing was a piece of art again. And it makes me think, I've never had back surgery, but I think I'll find these guys and have them cut me up and rebuild my back, because that's a swing that you don't
Yeah.
get from
Yeah.
back surgery. And yet you wonder, what is the medical details of that? I mean, I don't want to get into it now, but it's just his recovery from back surgeries. How many?
Well,
I
I
mean,
mean,
it's just-
let's be honest. I imagine he's probably had the best orthopedic surgeon that money can buy in America for a start off. He
Yeah.
might probably had a team of these people looking at him.
Yeah.
But also, a couple of interesting things he has said is that sure, he's had all these surgeries and they've got him back playing, got him back winning, but he's had to change his swing quite dramatically.
Yeah.
And he says he can't practice as much as he used to, even with all of these surgeries that he's
Right.
had.
I've read
He
that.
said, I can't hit the ball as far. I can't swing the ball as well. He says, so I have to think my way around the golf course more than I did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's that mental kind of game that he brings to his golf that I think helped him in both Augusta and Japan.
Well, I'll tell you, in sum, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does in the new year, especially again when we get back to Augusta. But just where his career goes from here, because when you watch Zozo, in the wake of winning the Masters, you think that he's in a second career all over again. I mean, if there's no more injuries, and he's learning to manage the time, as you noted there, and what he can do and what he can't do, I mean, we could enjoy his golf for the next 5 years or more.
Maybe, but maybe it's just my natural pessimism, but I'm not as optimistic as you. I think at 43, these concessions that he's made this year about the fact that he cannot practice as much as he used to, he can't hit as many balls on the practice fairway. The age factor, 43, coming up, was it 44, or his birthday, I think, is in the last week of December. I don't know, and the competition is so fierce. The fields are so deep with talent now that although I have heard commentators say this year, after Augusta, he will get to the magic number of 18. He's now on 15, right?
Yeah.
He's got the momentum going again. This is the argument that's being advanced. He's got the momentum, and he showed in Japan that when he focuses on a tournament, he can probably match it with the best in the world. So he will get to 18. I can't share that optimism.
Well, I'll tell you, if you look at the majors next year, we'll take Augusta. All right, he knows Augusta. The U.S. Open is at Harding Park in San Francisco. I don't know that sets up for him well, or anyone, because it's one of these courses, U.S. Open, that players don't see so often. British Open Championship, Royal St. George. I wouldn't have a clue, but being the British Open Championship, I wouldn't. Tiger might be a favorite among them, but I wouldn't count on him winning that. And the PGA Championship earlier in the year in May. Where's that being played now?
I'm not sure.
I had it written down here somewhere. But when I looked at the course, I'll tell you, U.S. Open at Wingfoot. That was the other one.
Yeah, that's a tough
and
course,
Wingfoot is one of the most difficult of Open U.S.
Very
Open.
exposed, isn't it? Right on the
Yeah,
coast.
it's exposed. It's a link.
Yeah.
And so if he's going to win 18, I'll say, okay, I would give him the Masters again next year, and then what? And that's what I mean by saying looking forward to it, because even if, as you know, all this young talent is coming through, just his presence in a tournament actually makes me pay a little bit more attention than I would normally.
And you could see that as well. The crowds that were following him at Augusta, Augusta is full every year, but in Japan, again, it reminded me of those old golden days of Tiger. This ability, this magnetic ability he has to draw people to a golf course just because he's playing.
That's right.
As you just alluded to there. And so, sure. He's got the Ryder Cup next year as well.
Correct.
It's a curious thing about Tiger, though, isn't it? He has a very poor record in match play.
Right.
It's like kind of he's in his own world when he's out on a golf course, and it's very hard for him to broaden his view of the round or the tournament and embrace someone into his game, which is what you have to do to get that chemistry to work in things like the Ryder Cup.
I think every Ryder Cup captain of the teams that he's been on has had this dilemma of who to pair him with for that very reason, because he carries his own aura, his own cosmic thing going on, and and certainly he and Mickelson were a disaster.
Yeah.
You know, because Mickelson is whoo, you know, at
Yeah,
times.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you know, so it's they say Furyk was his. I don't know about that. If Furyk was his best partner, but by the time this broadcast maybe is released, I mean the President's Cup will be happening.
Yeah, yeah.
So it'll be very interesting to see as captain and player,
Yeah,
if he
yeah,
does,
yeah.
if that actually turns that record around a bit.
Okay, we could spend all day talking about Tiger, but when I look at 2019, okay, we could go through every tournament by tournament, but I kind of like to look at the year in terms of the best golfers in the world, what they did do or what they didn't do. And sure, we agree that Tiger and his performance at Augusta was the highlight. But there's kind of three golfers I think that the year largely revolved around, which is a bit unkind, I suppose, on a lot of others. But Tiger, Rory McIlroy, and Brooks Koepka. And interesting, isn't it, that Koepka, with his fantastic record this year in the majors, I think his worst finish in the four majors was fourth. He won one, had 2 seconds, a third, and a fourth. An extraordinary record. And so you would have thought, without any doubt, he would be the player of the year, but he missed out to Rory McIlroy. And this is interesting because it's the players themselves on the PGA Tour, the registered players on the US PGA Tour, that pick the player of the year. They're playing alongside each other for 12 months of the year, so you can't argue, I guess, about their opinions because they get a better view than anyone. They went for Rory and not Brooks.
Well, I think Rory was surprised with that. I mean, I think a lot of people were surprised by that choice. However, I mean, Rory, what did he do? He won the Players.
He won the Players.
He
won the
World
FedEx
Golf Championship.
He won
in
a
China.
World Golf Championship, and he won the Canadian Open.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And didn't he win the FedEx the year
Yeah, that's
before?
right, the Tour Championship.
So, I mean, there's no denying that he had a great year. And, and I think when the players look at the game, I mean, Brooks is number one in the world. You know, Koepka's number one in the world still.
Rory's number two.
And so I mean, to me it was a coin toss as to which one of those were Player of the Year. But I think you've named two that really, along with Tiger, that really do stand out as being at the top of the game. And I would include Xander Schauffele in that as well. He wasn't a big winner. He won once. I should have checked that out. But he was always there. He I would add with Rory 14 top tens, I think, along the way. But Schauffele had a series of top tens as well, and he was just always there. And then something happened in round 3 or maybe round 4 that knocked him back a shot or two. And so I would say I would include him on that list, and even go so far as to say if you're looking at predictions for any of the majors next year, put Schauffele on your list, because I think he now and John Ram would have to be in that top group.
Yeah, John Rahm as well finished very strongly. Let's just talk about Rory for a moment. Yes, many surprised that he didn't get the that he did get the Player of the Year. I imagine it's not often that a guy that doesn't win a major championship wins the Player of the Year. That's the first thing. But you've mentioned his 14 top tens. He did have 4 wins, and I guess if you were to extend the major championship season, you would probably next put into that list the Players' Championship as a major, and probably the FedEx Cup as a major, and he won both of those.
Right.
So you could argue that he beat fields which probably was stronger than the Masters field, which only has about 90 in it, and so I think quite rightly a lot of emphasis and credibility has been given to Rory for his win in those 2 tournaments. Plus, he had he won the Harry Vardon Trophy, which is for the stroke average. I think it was 69.05. Extraordinary. That was his stroke average, and he only plays in tournaments which are on tough courses, majors, and things like the Players' Championship, where the fields are very strong. And to average 69 from these tournaments, I mean, he's not playing in tournaments, where the winning score is 25 under par, and yet he was still averaging 69 for the whole year.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that contributed to all of that was the fact that he made this commitment in January of this year to base himself and play more in the U.S. His wife is American. And I think in the past, Rory has been flying, across the pond, as they say, the Atlantic, so much that it's got to be disruptive at times. And this year was different. He did less of that. He still appeared in Europe, but he did less of the travel and less of the flying, and I think that contributed. There's also an interesting fun fact I read about Rory the other day. Here you go. He made 13 of 14 cuts in big tournaments, including the majors. The one cut he missed was in Northern Ireland at the Open Championship, where he's from. And I thought, what was going on up in there, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So
well, he lost
playing in front of the home crowd.
He probably failed to make the cut after the first hole when he had an 8 on a par 4 of the opening hole there.
I couldn't believe that. I was watching that.
Poor guy got a bit unfortunate. He hooked his iron shot off the tee, playing conservatively off the tee, and finishes up out of bounds. And then his third shot was only just in. Terrible lie. He's kind of made his way down to the green eventually. I think he might have 3-putted as well or something, but 4 over after one hole.
Shock value.
Exactly, and it probably rippled through his game for the next 35 holes.
I think it did. And if I recall, he fought back, but he came one shot.
He had a 65, on the second day.
And he missed the cut by a shot.
So
he made a bit of a comeback there. But that first hole in that first round, you think, no, let's change the rules and allow the homeboy to start over again. Can we do that?
Yes. But anyway, the other thing about Rory, which I'm sure probably didn't come into the judgments of the players on the tour, is this X factor that he's got, hasn't it? I mean, I prefer to watch Rory than I do Tiger, because that swing of his is just something that I'm just hopelessly in love with. I love those slow motion replays. He's only my height. He's only about 5'9", 5'10", and he's not massive like Brooks Koepka or some of these guys that hit it a mile. Even Tiger, the size of Tiger, he towers above Rory, and yet I think he's number 2 in driving distance.
Flexibility, that turn, that power he generates off that backswing. I mean,
sometimes I wonder how easy it's going to be for Rory McIlroy when he's 50 to get out of a chair with that back of his. But I'm sure he looks after himself. So he, I think, has had probably his best year since he won a major, which I think was 4 or 5 years ago. So if he continues to play like he's done since he missed the Open, for the second half of the year, if he produces that form next year, I cannot see him missing out on a major in 2020.
Missing out in what?
I can't,
winning?
I'm seeing him. He has to win a major in 2020 if he continues to play like he is at the end of 2019.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the one will be at Royal St. George. It'll be the Open Championship, and he'll make that comeback from his embarrassment in the UK last year. So
a lot of pressure on him. And Brooks Koepka, he was peeved, I think would be the polite word to use, at not getting the Player of the Year.
Was he?
Yeah.
Did he say something?
And he made this comment, which has been misinterpreted probably. Different ones mentioned to him this rivalry now between Rory and Brooks Koepka. And they had a couple of tournaments where I think Rory got the better of him this year, but Koepka won the US Open, I think, wasn't it, this year? And so he said, hey.
He won the PGA.
Gary
Woodland won the US
Woodland
Open
won the US
at
Open,
Pebble Beach, very steady.
So they said to Koepka about this rivalry with Rory, and he said, there's no rivalry between Rory and me. He said, in the time that I've won 4 majors, Rory hasn't won any. So there's no rivalry.
No, of course not.
So I kind of told you that he's a deadly serious kind of guy, isn't he, Brooks Koepka?
Seems to be.
And he's when he's on, he's probably the best golfer in the world, isn't he?
I think so. Unbelievable,
And
players say that.
And that record of his, finishing in the top 4 in 4 successive majors is almost got a Tiger Woods look about it, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, you got to pick him for being a major winner next year as well. So
Dustin Johnson, great year in 2018, just didn't quite cut it with those two this year, did he?
No.
DJ?
Yeah, maybe he'll make a comeback next year, but if he doesn't, we're gonna have to have him bring him down here to Chamberlain Park to have a lesson.
Well, yes, we must talk about Chamberlain Park in a moment. Phil Mickelson, he's sort of kind of in no man's land now, isn't he? He's not. Can you see him really? What is he, 48 now? Can you really see him winning a major?
No, I don't. And
is he just hanging on for 50
I think
now?
so. Yeah, I think so. And he's filthy rich. And in fact, after Tiger, Phil made $44 million last year, of which $41 million was endorsements.
Yes,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So he's second richest golfer after Tiger, who's about $45 million, I think. So he doesn't. Phil, I think he will start being funkier. He'll do things and he'll do his flop shots for the audience, and he'll do some things. I think he'll get serious when it comes to the majors. But no, I wouldn't put him on my list of a major winner for next year.
I think a bit like Fred Couples. He can be, as Couples was, competitive in a major for a few years after he turned 50 without seriously in a position to take one out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he lost some weight, so let's give him some credit for that.
Yeah. To our guys, Ryan Fox, very important year for him, 2019, winning his first European Tour event, the tournament in Perth, the Nines, I think it's called, or the Sevens. No, the Sevens is rugby. I think it's Nines. They played 3 times 3 or something, didn't they?
It's a strange one, but he won it, and it is European sanctioned. So
Super Sixes, yeah.
Good
he
on
played
him.
6 holes.
Yeah.
6 holes of match play, against opponents, and he got himself, I see, 160,000 euros for winning it.
Yep.
Then he took a big break, got married. I think his best got married as well. Did a lot of fishing somewhere off the top of the North Island of New Zealand, and then really struggled to get back into it, and then sadly missed out on the Road to Dubai finals.
Yeah, and his world ranking shot up. He was shot up 50 places or something like that very quickly at the end of this year. And I don't think that after that win in Perth, and then no disrespect intended to marriage as an institution, but and then you go fishing, and I think he lost some momentum.
Yeah.
And I think when you professional golf, my impressions are that you got to keep playing and keep playing and keep playing, because you can lose it all very quickly, and I think that's what happened.
I think he might have had a small injury problem as well with his foot, I suspect, or I heard, and so that might have been why he took a decent break to try and get rid of a few niggles. But anyway, he's had a very successful year. He's won the best part of $1 million. Danny Lee, well, Danny is just a kind of a roller coaster guy, isn't he? When he's hot, he can kind of match it with anyone in the world, but when things aren't going his way, he seems to drop his bundle pretty quickly.
Yeah, it surprises me. In fact, in that sense, I'm surprised that I think he's now, after finishing second at Mayakoba, he's now 99th in the world. I think I read that, and that means he's broken the top 100, and that surprised me, because I thought he would have been in danger of actually losing his tour card, as he's done before. But he seems to hang in there.
Yeah, he has a couple of really big finishes every year.
He was 7th at the Players.
Yeah, exactly. He was 7th at the Players, and he also did well at the start of the new season in Korea, where I think he was, in fact, he was leading there at one stage. I think midway through the third round, he and Justin Thomas, and in the end, Thomas prevailed. But I mean, he has this ability, like he shot a 62 recently on a tour in the United States, and then went 70, 70, 74, and finished 26th. He doesn't seem, and I do remember this without wishing to be too critical of Danny, that when he was an amateur, there was a couple of times where you saw him just give up the ghost. Because he couldn't win a tournament, he almost just went through the motions, and I think he might have got reprimanded by New Zealand Golf for displaying less than total commitment to the game when he was playing in an amateur championship or something. And I see a bit of that in as well. He just keeps going hard at it, attacking, and when things don't go right, he kind of just lets things drip. The other day I see he in his fourth round, where he had 74, he had a quadruple bogey on one hole. He had an 8 on about 3 holes from the finish. And when I saw that on his card, I thought, he'd probably figured he wasn't going to win it. And so, he dropped his bundle a bit there and finishes up with an 8 and shoots down to 26th place. But I think he'll be encouraged at what he's done this year. He finished 73rd on the FedEx Cup, so he made the cut there easily enough. And he usually has 3 or 4 tournaments where he wins $300,000 or $400,000, and that gets him in the top 125.
Yeah. Well, the strange thing about golf is, we'd start off with Tiger and the comeback, and Brendan Todd, I wanted to talk about his great comeback, and that applies to Ryan Fox and Danny Lee as well. Is that the year is over? Let him catch a breath and start anew, maybe in Hawaii. and they both have got game. We know
Yeah,
that. We
yeah.
know that from
What they've
Fox's
done.
great score, 29 on 9 holes at the
Good.
So we know they got game, and I don't think with either of them, like Lydia Ko, maybe people are panicking about Lydia Ko. And maybe there's reason because she might be looking towards retirement. But with Ryan Fox and Danny Lee, I mean, no panic there. They'll come back and they'll play well in the new year, I'm sure.
They are our top two male golfers, and I imagine they will be probably again, like they were in Rio in 2016, our Olympic team in Japan next year. And the Olympic Games is one of the big things to look for in 2020 because it does seem that everyone is bought into it this year. Rory McIlroy already making a lot of complimentary noises and keen to get to Japan to play in the Olympic Games. And so there's a lot more enthusiasm for it a year out from the Olympics than was the case in 2015 when they were dropping like flies for all sorts of reasons, some sort of mosquito scare or something. And Rory didn't want to go and play in Rio because he was just got married and he didn't want his wife getting this virus, whatever it was, from mosquitoes, because that might impact on their ability to have a family and all that sort of stuff, which most of it was just nonsense. But anyway, that's all behind us now, and everyone, I think, is going to be teeing it up in Japan, which is exciting. Lydia, you've mentioned Lydia. I think it's probably the most disappointing year she's had as a professional. Too many tournaments where she's finished, way out of the top 10, 40th, 50th, 38th, 48th, these sort of finishes, which you never really saw from Lydia in the first 3 or 4 years as a professional. But since the Olympic Games in 2016, I think she's only won 2 tournaments at the most on the LPGA Tour, and her world ranking has fallen down to something like 37 or 38.
Yeah.
And you just wonder if there's any light at the end of the tunnel here now.
Yeah, especially in light of her talking about retirement when she's 30, and maybe now 30 becomes the new 25.
She certainly doesn't need to worry about her financial security in terms of her future. She's made millions both on and off the course. And so when your game isn't going well, as it isn't for her, and it's dragging on and on, you must start to think, why am I doing this? If I can't play anymore, and I don't need the money, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, do I do something else?
Yeah. And she's talked about doing that, like getting a degree or going.
Okay, to the local scene, and I suppose it's appropriate that we should finish on a nice optimistic note. I think you and I are both keen to see, as Aucklanders, as many golfers in the city are, that the local body elections brought about some new faces on the Auckland Council, and Chamberlain Park, which seemed absolutely destined for the knackers yard, if I use that terrible expression, has now been given a new life, and it looks like we're going to have it kept as it should be,
a reprieve
for an 18-hole golf course.
Yeah, I think that's good news. I mean, I got a note from Dean Murphy at New Zealand Golf saying some of the highlights for him, and apart from increase in membership of both around clubs in the country, both seniors and juniors, which was good news, and a successful New Zealand Open, Chamberlain Park was on his list as well, and rightfully so, Brendan. I mean, because my position always was the $30 million was obscene.
Oh, it's a nonsense.
And
to make a park.
I know, and it wasn't going to be $30 million. It was going to be more like $45 million, and it was going to be disastrous environmentally. Not just because they were taking out 1,000 trees or something that nature, but the earthworks and all of that on volcanic soil. It was crazy. It was mad, and so I think the new council that have now sort of made peace among the two different factions. I've made the right decision, because I was at Chamberlain Park just the other day playing my usual 9 holes, and I was reminded of how important it is when I'm standing on the first tee and up from the 9th hole come 8 Samoans, right? And they're all in a group, 8 of them, and they're regulars there, and they play there, and in groups of 8, and they get out and they have a good time, and that's what golf should be. Golf should be accessible to everybody, anyone who wants to play at any time and however they want to play it, rules or no rules. And I was reminded of how important Chamberlain Park is at that very moment.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, to me it was really sad that the council picked on the one golf course in Auckland which is accessible for those who, for various reasons, can't afford to pay the best part of $2,000 as an annual subscription to join a conventional sort of golf club, whereas Chamberlain Park offers that entry point, first of all, for those that want to take up the game, and because it's cheap, it's a council basically subsidised golf course, so you can get on quite cheaply, and yes, you've got a large Polynesian population that plays at Chamberlain Park for the camaraderie. It's important. It's a social kind of outlet, and they probably can't afford, as I said, to pay the kind of money that they would need to join any one of the clubs. There's about 40 of them in Auckland. So I'm thinking, why would they do this? Why would the Auckland Council cut this kind of important social outlet off for people of kind of lower income level? So it makes a lot of sense to hang on to it. Secondly, it's an iconic golf course in Auckland. It used to host professional tournaments. I can remember when I was a teenager growing up in Wellington, following people like Cal Nagel, Peter Thompson, Bob Charles, Walter Godfrey, New Zealand professional back in the 1970s, won a tournament there and got chopped for the Norwest Motorway many years ago. But it's still a really nice, pleasant 18-hole golf course. It's impeccably kept, and yes, it's popular at certain times. But it's a really vital part, I think, of the golfing landscape of Auckland and its history and its tradition. And to put a chainsaw through it was just vandalism. Vandalism.
Vandalism. A crime.
Absolutely.
A felony.
And this nonsensical assertion made by one of the guys who was leading the cause for Chamberlain Park to be reduced to 9 holes. And I remember once interviewing this gentleman on the radio. I can't remember his name now, well I do, but I won't mention it. And he claimed it was necessary to do this because there's no greenery, there's no parks around this part of Chamberlain Park, this part of Auckland, Mount Albert, which is complete and utter nonsense. Across the road is Zoo Lake, which has got hectares of lakes and recreational area and grass as well, and there's parks everywhere around that part of Auckland, so there was no justification for it. So it was great that we finished the year by saving Chamberlain Park, and we should pay special thanks to those people who fought the good fight, took the council to court and got a stay and just bought themselves some time, and the local body election came along just in time. So well done. And if you play your golf at Chamberlain Park, you enjoy your golf, as I'm sure you will there in 2020. Well, that's our lot, I think, for 2019. That's our lot for this decade, Tom.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been fun. We had some good guests. I enjoyed hearing John Hart talk about the U.S. Open, and we had, as I mentioned, Dean Murphy in to talk about developments in New Zealand golf from his desk, and that was very informative. John Lister came along, and it's always good to have him along because he's got intuitive knowledge of the game like few people have. And so we've had some good guests, and we'll look forward to having some more next year. I guess probably about 1st of February or something like that.
And we want to get into more clubs as well and visit more clubs and find out about what's going on in the heart and soul of New Zealand golf, which and that is what golf is all about. It really is. Golf is only kept alive because of those people who belong to golf clubs, pay their membership, and keep the game going at grassroots level.
And from what Dean is telling us, that the
memberships,
it's increasing. Numbers are increasing.
I can believe that by the amount of time it takes me to get through 18 holes midweek at my course here in Auckland. Even getting a tee time is a little victory, and that's a sure sign that people are coming back to the game of golf, and that's great. So to all our listeners and viewers, we wish you good golfing for 2020. Have a very enjoyable and safe holiday time, and we look forward to catching up with you again in the new year.
Cool.